Here I'm going to explain how to use the HLOOKUP function in Excel. Now the HLOOKUP function is a lot like the VLOOKUP function. In fact, it's exactly the same except for it searches for data horizontally, whereas the VLOOKUP does it vertically. So if you're familiar with the VLOOKUP, the HLOOKUP is going to be very easy for you. So first let me explain what the HLOOKUP actually does. The HLOOKUP function is going to help you sift through large amounts of data and get results from that data. So get information from it based on certain criteria. And so it's very good if, say, you're maintaining a database for anything. Here what I have a list of 6 parts, and I have their sales for 3 months. Now this is small, but if I had it for going back 10 years, 12 months every year, and I had 150 different parts, the HLOOKUP is going to really come in handy. Because what it's going to do, it's going to allow me to enter a value here, a part number, and then it's going to return sales for these months. And the reason that an HLOOKUP function is going to be used here is the orientation of the data. If the part numbers were in the left column like this and the months on top, I'd want to use a VLOOKUP. So let me try and explain how the HLOOKUP works by first writing the function. So I want to type in a product here, and I want this month's sales to appear here. We're going to start the function by equals HLOOKUP, open parentheses. Now the lookup value can either be text or a cell reference. If it's text, you need to surround it with quotation marks. So if I type in a part number right here, I have to use quotation marks. But I don't want to do that. I want to use this cell right here. So actually, let me first zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to use this cell for the lookup value. The next thing is the table array. Now the table array is going to be where you get all of your data from. And so include the part number and all of the data for the months for all of the parts. Then comma. The next is the row index number. Now the row numbers are relative to the table array. So the table array is my green box right here, and it goes row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. And I want to get sales numbers for January, so I want row 2. So I put 2. And the next thing is the range lookup. Now this is optional. If I leave it blank, it's going to default to true. The two things I can put in here are true or false. If you put in true, what's going to happen is when the HLOOKUP looks up the lookup value, it's going to look for an exact value, and if it doesn't find that, it's going to go to the next lowest value. And it's very good for using if you're looking up numbers, but here we're looking up parts, and the parts start with text, so we want them to be exact. The false is going to only show an exact result. If it doesn't find an exact result, it's going to give you an NA. So since we're searching with text, we want to use false. So false. Now if you're looking for a good example of when to use true, it could be if you're doing like a grade book. And I have a good example of that using the VLOOKUP in one of the other tutorials. So that'll give you a good explanation of how to use true. So back to this, close parentheses, and that's my HLOOKUP. So let me hit enter and show you what it's going to do. I want to look up a part number, say ASD-02. So I hit enter, and it tells me that the sales for January are 324, and that's correct. So let me explain how that happened, how that worked. So the HLOOKUP, we have the lookup value and the table array. Now the table array is where everything's going to come from in here. And the lookup value is what you use to get the other data. Now the lookup value is always going to look in the first row of the table array. So when I have this product here, or the part number, it will always search the first row. So that's why you have to include the part numbers in the table array. You cannot use it to search the second or the third row. You can't do that. It's only going to do the first row, so don't forget that. The other thing is the column, or the row index number, the row index number. That's 2, because this is the first row and this is the second row, and we want data from January. But that doesn't explain how it got 324. So when you use the lookup value, I did ASD02, what happens is the HLOOKUP goes to the first row, looks for ASD02, and it finds it. Now, it needs to know how many columns to go down, or how many rows to go down to find the value that you want. And I put 2. It knows it's already in the first row, so it goes down to the second row, and it gives you 324. So that's how it works. It's going to find the part number, and then it's going to go down by however many rows you tell it to go. And that's how it works. So let me go ahead and do the HLOOKUP for February. Equals HLOOKUP, open parentheses. I want to use this value, or this cell for the lookup value, comma, my table array, comma, the row index number. Now I want data for February, so I go row 1, row 2, row 3. So I want 3 for the row index number. The next thing is the range lookup. I want false, and I did false because I want the part number to be exact. I want it to be an exact match. So now let's take a look what it does. B12, it's going to search for ASD02, finds the part number right here, then it goes down to the third row, 1, 2, 3, the third row, and it's going to give me 333. So I sold 333 of these parts in February. If I hit enter, notice that it is indeed 333. So March is going to be exactly the same, except for with a different row number. And this time I want the 4th row number. So notice the only difference between these 3 HLOOKUP formulas is the row number. This one's 2, then 3, then 4. So if I type in a different part number here, ASD04, all of these numbers change accordingly. So all it did was it looked for the part number ASD04, then it returned the value for January, then February, then March. And that's how it works. Now, it is a little bit confusing at first. So go to the website excelishell.com, and from there you can get the spreadsheet that you see here and follow along in the tutorial, and that may help you out a little bit. But the main thing is to just try it out yourself. And after you've done it a few times, you'll start to understand how everything works. Now note that this is a basic introduction to how HLOOKUP works, because you can get much more complicated and add a lot of other features to the formula to make it more robust and so that it will do a lot more. But for now, that's a basic introduction to the HLOOKUP.